Good morning. It's Eric Schwartzman here with Brian Snyder from Golin. I'm joining you this morning from lovely Sydney, Australia. And to prove that it's Sydney, Australia, that's an apricot and that's a cherry. Summer fruit. Yeah, summer down under. So I guess it's no snowy Santas this year down here. How are things in Chicago?
Incredibly windy. So our office is in the Hancock building, and you could hear the windows rattling all around us with the wind. We're up on the 26th floor, and yeah, it's a little out there.
I read
Different.
about a gnarly snowstorm hitting that just passed through Denver. Did that
Mm-hmm.
happen?
There's my boss, my colleague, was actually just out in Colorado skiing, and his pictures looked amazing. So if you're watching, hey Jeff. Yeah, it's a pretty bad travel day across the U.S. today.
Well, I'm glad I'm out. That's all I have to say.
You made the right move. I wish I were somewhere where it was summer right now.
Yeah, it's really nice. Really nice. Australia's. I imagine it's what probably it must have been like in the U.S. back in the 80s. It's not that crowded.
Okay.
The cities, the municipal governments are able to take care of the people. There's not a homelessness problem, or there doesn't seem to be scarcity issues as we have seen in the U.S., which certainly are challenging.
Absolutely. Well, that's good.
So
how long are you over there?
Just for the week. I'm back on Sunday. And when you come here, it takes 2 days, but when you go back, you arrive the day you came and the morning you left.
I
So
love when you can
you
travel
get your
through
day
time.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm happy to be here. I'm here for a thought leaders conference, a group of thought leaders that are authors, speakers, and consultants in different industries who come together 4 times a year to talk about thought leadership and ideation and the development of intellectual property.
I love that. Wow.
Excited about it. Yeah, it's my second one. So,
And when does
anyways,
it start?
it starts this morning.
All right.
It's 7 o'clock here.
7
I'm up
o'clock. You're
bright
going to
and
roll right out of
early.
this.
Up bright and early for this, and then I'll go straight to the conference at 10. They're civilized over here, man. They start at 10, they end at 4. It's a whole
Wow.
different deal, and they're laid back, man. People aren't like all over you. They can they're fairly chill, so it's nice.
Well, I'll be following you on Twitter and see what you learn along the way that you want to share with everybody.
Honestly, I don't share as much on Twitter during conferences as I used to. Like I used to be, tweeting the whole time, and I find I don't do it as much anymore. Partially because of this book I read by Cal Newport called Deep Work.
Yeah.
Which is a fantastic book. I would really recommend. It's about creating elite level, high level intellectual property in a world of distraction, and it's about deliberate, sustained attention to increase the level of the intellectual girth of the content you produce.
That makes sense.
And so we are going to be talking about CXPR, which is such a cool. I mean, I heard it for the first time at the Annenberg Symposium where they released the relevance report, and your colleague Johnny Bentwood had written one of the essays in there, and he mentioned it, CXPR, and then another one of the essays referenced it, and it piqued my curiosity. So thanks for agreeing to talk about CXPR.
Sure, happy to. So CXPR stands for Customer Experience Public Relations, because we believe that in today's world, the reputation of a brand or a company is not just what they say it is, but it's really the sum total of what their customers, the media, the influencers are saying about them. And so a lot of those kind of brand defining conversations are taking place in and around social media. So if you think about it, we're a PR agency. You were at the Annenberg School PR Symposium. Thinking about if you want to earn your way into hearts and minds of customers, you need to put that kind of PR level discipline into one-on-one engagements in social. because every company out there today is talking about digital transformation, but every company out there is following the same kind of playbook of AI and mobile apps and chatbots to get there. So while being digital used to be a differentiator in and of itself, it's now kind of table stakes that every company is a digital company, so there's this sea of sameness. And companies that are really breaking through are the ones who are forming deeper relationships with their customers and really bringing humanity and emotion to their engagement. And you can't do that with machines on its own. So that's kind of one piece of it. The other thing is that when you post in social media about a brand, it's not just a one-to-one between you and that brand. It's seen by all of your friends, all of your followers. In a world where we know that newsroom budgets are shrinking every single day, journalists are under more pressure to do more with less. So journalists are out there sourcing stories from what they read for breaking news in social media. So while so when you do that, you think about, why are companies treating social engagement the way they do a call center? You know, so much social engagement with brands is cold, it's robotic, it's overly scripted. Those teams that when I talk to leaders in social engagement, they're managed for things like speed and volume and not how they delight customers or retain them or acquire new customers. So they miss that opportunity to build the human connections, and they also miss out on those emerging risks and opportunities. So we built CXPR with these two big trends in mind. It's really, CXPR is our combination of proprietary software configuration with our expertise, with our people, and our services that filter, sort, prioritize these inbound social conversations, and then route it to the right kind of specialist for response, whether that is an issues management specialist or a brand building opportunity with a marketer, or really a customer service issue that needs a customer service kind of response. So it integrates with existing customer service teams, because not every social interaction is created equal. Some are risks and opportunities, some are day-to-day customer service issues. So the other thing about CXPR is that it generates rich data. When you're doing all of these different interactions and you're managing them in real time, you can understand better about your customers. So this is insights that are truly actionable, not just for communicators or marketers, but also for operations level business leaders to be able to make changes to the business based on what they're seeing in social.
When you mention, insights, the first thing I think is psychographics, which
Yeah.
seems like it's fair game. I mean, I realize that in the political sphere, it has been, seen as skullduggery. But the truth is, we are willingly giving over this information to social networks. Does that come into it? Psychographic profiling? Can you use that to build to filter or to organize discussions by a persona? How does that work?
Yeah, so you can actually, a lot of times when people do personas, and we do persona work as well, a lot of times it's done with some primary research, some secondary research. You craft the persona, it sits on a shelf. Sometimes it's used, sometimes it's not used. But the idea of a persona as a living, breathing portrait of your end customer that you can inform over time with what you're seeing, with what they're talking about in social media. And it's not just what they're talking about with your brands, right? If you start looking at what are those customers talking about when they're not talking about the brands that you represent, you can better understand them as people, and that can give you more opportunities. So more opportunities to get closer to the customer, to deliver better products, to market in ways that really speak to them as people.
And with respect to psychographics, how are you able to get that information? Is that a Facebook thing? And can you talk at all about, I realize it's a proprietary configuration, so
Yeah,
I realize you can't say everything, but what can you say about sort of the stack that you've assembled to handle CXPR?
So really what it does is it starts with artificial intelligence, and it's not just an off-the-shelf artificial intelligence package, but it's about how do we design those algorithms that can sort out this is a potential emerging issue from this is just a routine customer service inquiry to this is perhaps a story that if we can amplify it, tugs at the heartstrings, tells a real human story, and becomes kind of a marketing moment. So when we put these different kind of algorithms in place and we use different kinds of social listening tools like Sprinkler to be able to do that kind of work and configure it in a way that not only helps to figure out what's important, what's not, what's resolvable or respondable versus not, creates a lot of efficiency for our clients, but also then helps them to really figure out what is just a customer service opportunity and what's really something more.
You like Sprinkler? You're bullish on Sprinkler as the solution. What did you guys play around with Hootsuite at all?
Yes, we actually use a variety of different platforms. So we do use a combination of Hootsuite and TalkWalker for many of our customers, and Sprinkler. We use Koros and other tools as well.
Is it pretty much what the customer's already using, or do you recommend what they should use?
That's where it starts. So it starts with, of course, whatever the customer has in house, we want to make sure that we're integrating with them. And that's why we as an agency maintain experts on the various different platforms. But then when we are looking at it, it's around recommending a product that's going to meet the needs of the customer. So if it is somebody that has millions of social media mentions, and when you think about like big retailers or big QSR companies, they have those millions of different mentions, mobile phone technology companies, millions of mentions. And when we're working with them, we might deploy something like a Sprinkler. But sometimes when it's a smaller company that doesn't have that kind of level of need, you don't need to bring a gun to a knife fight. I don't know what the right analogy is there, but don't you try to match the solution to the need.
So obviously there's all kinds of great data that you can use on social to figure out who's who and where they're coming from and what their influence is. But I mean, social is sort of one data point, or you could say it's one channel. What about other channels? Like I think about like G2, the review site, or actual customer service data. Like what are people complaining about? What is a chronic issue? And also product utilization. Like if you are promoting a product, particularly if it's a SaaS product or some sort of digital product that has data behind how it's being utilized, can and are you allowing those data sets to get in and sort of comparing that to what you're finding in social? And if so, how, and how does that work?
I mean, when you think about it, you can look at different channels and what the different trends are in the conversation. So if you're looking at public versus private chats, if you're looking at email correspondence, you can mine all of that for insights, as well as transcription of phone calls. Now, when you're talking about going to the next level of using that data, yes, there's SaaS for software, but also as every device becomes increasingly connected, those devices are throwing off data. And you might not have individual user data, but even when things like a stove or refrigerator becomes connected to the internet, you can tell how many times are people opening the door, what are the different trends in their usage, and be able to get insights out of that to better serve them.
I was up at Dreamforce last week, and they had a special sort of conference within a conference devoted to sales enablement, which, overlaps quite a bit with the concepts of CXPR, because it is about creating discrete communications, more that sales can use than service or marketing. But nonetheless, it's about, making sure that customer interactions are meaningful and consistent. And one of the keynotes was that guy, Paul DePodesta. He was the Moneyball baseball manager.
Oh yeah.
Who depended like heavily on the analysis performance data of college players and minor league players instead of the more traditional methods of scouting and observation. And he used that data to select players and make game day decisions. And one of the things he said was, you got to question the old way of doing things. You have to ignore best practices. And then he read that famous Thomas Paine quote, and here it is: "A long habit of not thinking a thing wrong gives it a superficial appearance of being right." And back in the day, that is when Thomas Paine said that, but it seems like that's more relevant today than ever. So when you come into an organization and you're helping them sort of read the tea leaves. How do you make sure that the data that they're following is the right data, that it's actually meaningful data and not just some, historical data point that they've been following forever that is relatively meaningless?
So the question is, what data is the right data, right? Thinking that through, you've got to look at what your different sources are, and figure out, first of all, what's available, right? If you're looking for your car keys and they're under your car, but you're looking in the parking lot under the lamp because that's where the light is, you're not going to find the car keys. So thinking about how do you get closer to that data, and a lot of that is really about building bridges within the organization. If you need to understand the customer utilization data, go make friends with the people who are in the software operations group, and go figure out from them where to get that data. Don't rely on what salespeople are telling you if you have an opportunity to also talk directly to end customers, right? So one of the things that we find with marketing is a lot of times you've got, here are the products that we want to sell, here are the features that we want to promote of this various product. Let's say that you've got a refrigerator, and it's got feature A, B, C, and D. And you might say that, okay, our engineering team and our market research has said that these are the things that people care about. Well, you can complement that data by looking at social and looking at what people are actually saying when they're not prompted, when they're not being asked. You think about the last election, there were a lot of people who said that they were going to vote one way, but then when they were in the voting booth, voted another way. Same kind of thing here. When people aren't being asked, when you can observe them in the wild on social media, you can find out a little bit more about what they really think. So sometimes we'll say, okay, you said it was A, B, C, and D, but when we looked, we saw it was actually B, then D, then C, then A are the things that are most important to your end customers. So it's not the only data point, but it's another data point to consider when you're making those kind of marketing decisions.
I'm going to ask you a question, and then as you start answering, I'm going to go turn on the AC because it's starting to get hot in here.
It's getting a little hot.
Here's the question. What data do customers want?
What data do customers don't want? Data.
When your clients come to you.
Oh, when our clients want.
What data do they want out of CXPR?
Sure.
What are their data priorities?
Okay.
I'll be right back, but I can hear you.
You can hear me? You promise?
Yep, I can hear you.
Think about the job of a CMO, and that's usually our client. And the job of the CMO, first and foremost, is to orient the company around the customer. So any kind of data that we can provide back to that CMO that says, here's a better understanding of the customer. Here's a way to look at the customer in a way that you haven't seen before, whether that is from IoT usage data or software data, like you said, or social data, and combining those different data points, it gives them a more robust and a more updated picture. Going back to our conversation about personas, that persona that was created with primary research and then kind of sits there, keeping that updated all the time. So if our customers want to know what's relevant to their customers and how to get there, that's what we can help them with through CXPR.
When you're offering data forward, how do you prove causation? It seems like it's such a difficult challenge. We're all sort of look at data and assume that because two measures are moving in the same direction at the same time that they're linked, but they may not be. There could be something that we can't measure that's impacting that. Namely, PR, which seems like it's so impervious to really measuring. I mean, how do you measure the effectiveness of a really great news media placement? There's no way to draw a straight line from that to sales or how people feel about a brand. I mean, you can make some guesses. So is there a way, does CXPR in any way fill that void?
Well, first of all, I don't know if it's necessarily a void that needs to be filled. I know that you read Johnny's entry for the Annenberg report, where we've developed, and I know that you've talked with him about the data journey that we've gone on in Golin. So looking at it all the way from awareness through loyalty and advocacy, there are correlations and causation between what happens from a PR perspective and what happens for consideration of customers. And we've got a really interesting set of data that proves that out. And we've been able to do that with several big brands. And I definitely encourage you to talk more with Johnny about that. But when you think about CXPR as kind of within the PR scope, it does that customer interaction on a one-to-one level feeds all the way through the customer journey. So from an awareness perspective, not just publishing social media one-to-ones, or excuse me, one-to-manys, because that's what a lot of people think about for awareness social media, right? We're going to come up with great content and we're going to push it to people and we're going to use paid media to target the right people. And that is well and good. But if you can talk with an influencer in a way that is relevant to them and appeals to them and makes them want to take what you said to them and share it forward with their followers, that's something special. Because then it's not just a piece of, it's not take my word for it, it's here's the endorsement of the influencer that can then create awareness for people. What do you think about,
how far does CXPR go? Like, is CXPR pretty much the quarterback fielding in the communications and putting distributing them to the right people and maybe coaching them on responding, or do you actually handle the response?
Yes to both. So CXPR is that the software configuration, the routing, but then it's also those specialists, and we have 4 different areas of specialty. So it's about managing brand risk. So we've got those kind of crisis communicators, and Golin has a long history of an incredible crisis communications and corporate reputation practice. So we draw upon those experts. From a brand building perspective, you think about all the different stories of marketing in the moment, making a customer famous. I wish I could talk about some more detailed examples of those, but because of the nature of the work, we can't often talk about our customers. But thinking about how you can take an influencer interaction and turn it into a real brand building moment. And then that customer service. So integrating with, obviously, we are a PR shop. It is not cost effective to have a PR, either a PR agency or a communicator in-house doing one-to-one responses to millions of customers. It's just not cost effective. So we integrate with either a third-party customer service group, or we can train an in-house group to be able to do that kind of customer service that they're used to doing on the phones, in chat, over email, but do it in a way that really works in social media. And then the 4th thing is this team of data scientists that looks for trends in the data to be able to produce insights back to the clients. So for all of those pieces, when we think about this as an agency, yes, we are the quarterback. We are the ones setting up the system to be able to decide who gets what pass on any given play. But also we could be the receiver. We can be the crisis manager. We could be the marketer. We can bring the social media customer care experts because we have a third-party partner we use for that. But at the same time, we can also plug in where there is existing capability. So some teams, you know, some companies will work with them on the brand side, but they'll have a different agency that supports them in corporate communications. So we can actually plug in that agency that says, okay, this is now a corporate issue. This is your thing. It goes right to them, and then we can support them that way.
Do you have a proudest data science moment since you've launched CXPR?
Oh my gosh, yes. I think my proudest moment since we launched CXPR was from data science. And it was a case where we saw a trend in data that was related to an operational business decision that our client thought would be great. It was deploying the latest kind of self-service technology, and they thought this was going to be a winner for their customers. Turns out their customers didn't like it as much. But it was only through certain times of the day that they didn't like it. And we were able to show data that said, okay, you've implemented this new process, but your customers still need you during these hours. And use that data to actually convince them to make an operational business decision to extend the hours of the service versus the self-service option.
Were there
And we were able to show them
any big objections you had to overcome, or any challenges in making that argument?
Of course, because somebody built this model that said if we have this self-service option between this hour and this hour, we're going to save this much money. It's going to become better for the customer because we've done trials that show that people like this self-service option. But the real data showed that people weren't reacting to it well. And by being able to say, okay, just test it, and we will be able to show you what happens if you go back to if you go back to regular service during these hours, we can show you the difference. And we did. And by convincing them to make that small pilot of going back to the regular service during those hours, we were able to make the case for why they should keep that decision the way that we had suggested it. It worked out really well for them and for the customers.
Did you see the number a couple weeks ago, the sketch on Saturday Night Live with Harry Styles, where he plays the social media manager at Sara Lee?
Yeah.
You did see that?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, in there, he had 2 accounts, but he was using the same, I guess, social media engagement platform. And he mistakenly made offhanded, you know, raunchy comments about other male users with emojis and sort of colorful, in colorful sequences. And he was being called in and told by his employers, "Hey, you shouldn't be doing this. This is terrible." And Sara Lee's not a client of yours, are they?
They are not.
Okay, good. So anyways, what happened was, you know, it was dogpile on the Sara Lee account. All the colorful, raunchy comments that the Harry Styles social media manager played, I think his name was Dylan in the skit, wound up getting, you know, posted to the Sara Lee Bread account. And they were awash in all this social gravity as a result of this Saturday Night Live skit. So if you were advising Saturday Night Live on that moment, I mean, if you were advising Sara Lee on that moment, how would you have played it?
I mean, you got to lean into it, right? You know that the conversation's happening. You can either look like you're part of the conversation, or you can look like you don't pay attention to pop culture. And if you don't pay attention to pop culture and you're Sara Lee, then you're out of touch with your own customers. Whenever something like that happens with a brand that we work on, because it does from time to time, you pop up in a weird, unexpected place in a news story or in a cultural moment or in a meme, and you've just got to ride it because that wave is coming. And whether you're going to be part of it and you're going to be on top of the wave or you're going to be hit by the wave, there's no way to stop it. You can't turn off the internet. And so I always look for what's a way that you can take whatever's happening, whether it's positive or negative, and find a way to engage with it in a way that's consistent with your brand's values and reflective of the values of your customers.
I'm going to age myself for a minute here. Do you remember Motrin Moms? Maybe not.
I don't know.
Okay, so Motrin did this commercial, early days of social media.
Okay.
It was moms wearing their babies with a bundle on the front of their body, and you know, complaining of back pain, and Motrin is here. And they wound up, you know, it wound up becoming a social media meltdown for the brand, and everyone dogpiled. How can you say that we have bad backs? We love holding our babies. It was, you know, anyways, long story short, the stock didn't move. You know, none of the discussion on social media had any impact on sales, the stock, or long-term value of the brand.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when things were just starting out, when, you know, a social media meltdown was hotter news. It seems like, you know, we've become more numb to it. We sort of expect these meltdowns now, and people are more forgiving. Do you think that's the case? I mean, do you think social media criticism, do you see brands kind of taking a little bit more of a calculated, considerate response to these types of issues than flying off the handle right away? Has it changed at all?
Every brand manager that I know still has the health of the brand at the center of everything that they do. They have the customer at the center of everything they do. So if they have a situation where they've wronged a customer that's blown up on them in social media, or there's been a social media gaffe, it might not have necessarily long-term effects for the health of the business, but that doesn't mean that it's not important. And so we often get called in. I actually had, you mentioned about the Harry Styles thing with tweeting from the wrong account. I actually did have a client a number of years ago who had a very similar gaffe. A low-level staffer was logged into the wrong account because they had access to that account for an event, and they left themselves logged in, and they started watching a political debate, and they started live tweeting politics, and their political views were quite fringe, to say the least. And so it ended up looking like the brand was saying these terrible things about then candidate Obama. And it really blew up into a big reputation issue because it called into question the values of the company, and it called into question what the people behind the company thought. And so when we spotted it in real time during the debate, and got on the phone with the head of the brand and said, this has to be something that comes from you. This can't be the nameless, faceless shape of the brand. This has to be you as an individual taking ownership for this and saying, hey, this is my brand, this is my team. This was obviously done by accident, but it was done in a way that was not consistent with our brands or with our brand, with our values, with our organization. And so this person is not going to be tweeting for us anymore. And you know, making the personal apology to everyone who was part of it, including the then presidential candidate. And I think it was a lesson because by engaging with humanity in the time of a brand crisis, they were able to show that these companies are made of people, and they are people who care about the customers and care about other people, and be able to turn that kind of trying situation into almost a positive. But a big part of what we do now in CXPR is set up systems so that you can't have that happen. You've got to set up the kind of checks and balances, internal governance, guardrails from a technical perspective and from a process perspective, so that you don't have the wrong account logged into on somebody's phone when they're out at the bar at night. If you are talking, I cannot hear you. But can you hear me? I can't hear you. You can hear me? I can hear other things on my computer.
How about now? You got me back?
Much better.
Awesome. Okay. So, you know, in journalism for years, you know, the saying was, if it bleeds, it leads. You know, the gory story is the one that's going to make it on the front page. And, you know, as we've seen in social media, you know, the algorithms tend to prioritize that which is controversial and that which is in line with your existing way of thinking as a way of encouraging product utilization. So as we come into this next election cycle, do you think more brands are going to be willing to take sides as a way of getting seen?
Some brands who are challenger brands might. There are a couple brands who we've worked with who are challenger brands who have taken a stand. I'm going to point to one, Cliff Bar. We worked with them and Luna Bar to really stick up for equal pay for women, and partnered with the women's national soccer team to do that. And we, including advertising on Pod Save America, which is a very left-leaning podcast. So really sticking up for it and saying, look, our values as a company are very progressive. We're not going to stop that, and we're going to live those values in everywhere that we can. Contrast that with a more legacy brand, where if you have everyone in the country is your customer, knowing how divisive politics are today, if you make a stand on anything that could be interpreted as a stand either way, you're going to upset literally half the country. You think about a company like Keurig. Did you see what happened with them last year at the Hannity show? Okay, so last year, Sean Hannity was talking about Roy Moore and how much he supported Roy Moore. And Roy Moore was the senator candidate from Alabama who was accused of some sexual activity that was illegal.
Pedophilia. It was pedophilia.
Let's go. Yeah, okay. I was trying to avoid saying that, but yeah, pedophilia. All right, so Roy Moore is out there doing his pedophilia thing. And there's this group online called Sleeping Giants that likes to point out using social media to brands who are advertising on shows and platforms that don't have those kind of progressive values. So Sleeping Giants and others were reaching out and peppering Keurig with, why are you advertising on Hannity? And so the Keurig social media team, with the best of intentions, goes to the advertising team and says, hey, are we advertising on them? And they said, oh no, we stopped advertising with them. So they went back and made a comment to the president of Media Matters for America, which is a very progressive media watchdog group, and said, oh yeah, we pulled our advertising. All of a sudden, that social customer care statement became the statement from Keurig. Now, this sent the entire other half of the country after Keurig. And not only the other half of the country, but we could actually do analysis and see that the Russian botnet got involved with the hashtag boycott Keurig hashtag. So this led to a whole backlash. Hannity himself got involved. Donald Trump Jr. got involved, really promoting that, beating up on Keurig for taking this kind of stand. And then Keurig kind of made a half apology in an internal memo that was leaked to the Washington Post that then got publicized, and then all of a sudden the progressive side of the country was all after them about the apology. So they ended up figuring out how to make everyone mad at them at the same time, which is pretty hard to do. But it all started with customer care, trying to just answer a question from a customer without thinking through what's the PR lens, what's the brand reputational risk of answering this question. And if they had a communications filter on that response, it wouldn't have gone out the way that it did, and the whole thing would have been avoided.
Was there an impact on sales or stock price?
I don't recall.
As we talk about CXPR, and obviously, you're at Golin, a very large agency dealing with incumbent legacy brands. You mentioned challenger brands or these startups that are, in some cases, willing to put speed before efficiency, despite uncertainty. When you sort of look at the continuum between the startup and the established player, where do you think CXPR it falls? Is it something that growth-oriented companies can get their arms around and take advantage of easier? Because as a company typically loses, or as the headroom of a market disappears and things become saturated, typically companies sort of look at customer service more as a cost reduction exercise. And I can't imagine CXPR is cost reduction. So, so it's curious to me is you work with a lot of big legacy brands. Legacy brands typically are saturated and have most of the market share, and typically are not looking to inflate their customer service costs. Yet you're doing CXPR in that sector. Is that just because of the relationships? Do you think this is going to grow with smaller companies as well, or do they just not have the money to do it? Any thoughts on that?
So, I mean, first of all, CXPR is a mindset, this idea of treating every one-to-one customer interaction as if it is the thing that could make or break your brand is something that companies of all sizes should do. It doesn't matter if you've got 100 customers or 1 million customers. If you treat every customer as important and you want to bring humanity, empathy, and action to every single interaction that you have with those customers, regardless of platform, you're doing something right. Now, where it becomes a little bit easier, if you are a very small company, a startup with hundreds of customers, or you're getting started, you can have those kind of one-to-one relationships yourself as the business owner, as the business lead. You might have somebody who is who's working on that as their full-time job, and that's it. But as you grow as an organization, it's harder to answer everybody with humanity and empathy. It's harder to know what's important. It's harder to know what's more respondable, what's less respondable, what's an opportunity, what's a risk, and it's hard to spot those things. So when you get to that kind of scale, that's when you need that software component to be able to help you do that routing. Because if you have the software component and it helps you do that routing, then you can get to a place where you've got efficiency. And when you've got efficiency, that's when costs come down. So if you can have your people spend less time looking at and evaluating, should we respond to this or not, and having them waste a lot of their time marking things as not respondable, you can then have them spend more time doing actual customer service, producing more value, and then it actually does become a cost-cutting measure. Because you can do the same level of work with fewer people, or the smarter way to do it is you can do better. You can do better work with the same number of people.
Does a CXPR initiative for a client also include media relations, or is it really strictly CXPR?
What is media relations today, right? Is it pitching a reporter? Because if it is, if your CXPR group sees an opportunity to engage with the reporter, they should engage your media relations group, and then together go out and put it together what that response is to that reporter. Or maybe it's not even a response. Maybe it's like giving them a call or an email. Hey, we saw you tweet this, and we think this is really interesting for you. We see you're having this experience. Here's an interesting story angle. So to be able to fit your product pitch into what is going on in the reporters' lives.
Well said. Other than the branded accounts that are hearing back from customers and giving responses, what about third-party sites? What about review sites? Or, I mean, do you wind up being active on those sites and outside of your own living room, carrying the message there, answering questions there as well?
Yeah, one of the things that is happening today is this kind of disintermediation and trust. So if you use a navigation app to find a restaurant while you're driving down the highway, and you say that you want a burger, that app is going to rank the order in which it gives you the places, not just by what's closest, but by what has the best reviews. So you've got to, as a company, as a QSR, be following those reviews and be ready to interact with those customers on those review websites. So if there's an interaction component, there's a CXPR component to it, because you can incorporate those ratings and review sites alongside forums, alongside social media, and be able to create kind of an end-to-end. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. It's just being able to be there for the customers wherever they are on whatever platform they are. And this also being able to utilize a system like a Sprinkler to be able to take these different inputs, whether it's from chat or email or a review site or social or wherever, and filter it through the same interfaces that you can then, from an efficiency perspective, train a customer service agent. Here's your console. Here's your queue of things to do. Start from the top and work your way down. You don't have to train them differently in how to respond to a review site versus how to respond to Twitter, because it's all through the same interface for them.
Hold on, I want to show you something.
Yeah, grab it. How's your temperature in your room, by the way?
So I'm on this sort of growth hacking book kick. I've been reading a ton of them, and this is the latest one that I'm reading.
Ooh, all right.
And
Is that
it's
a
all
forward by Bill
about
Gates? That I
yeah.
see on the cover there?
Yeah,
Nice.
it's written by this guy Chris Yeh, who used to write for the New York Times,
Mm-hmm.
but he wrote it with Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, Greylock
Yeah.
Partners, and it's all about sort of the science of rapid growth.
Okay.
And it's focused on those companies that benefit from a network effect, where it's a pretty much a winner take all or a winner take
Yeah.
most opportunity, and where these companies sort of take a calculated risk and really prioritize speed over efficiency
Okay.
despite massive uncertainty. And
Okay.
it talks about how some of these companies even buy markets. Like,
Yep.
when Uber goes into a market, they lose money.
Mm-hmm.
When eBay, I'm sorry, when PayPal was building up, they were losing money on transactions just
Yeah.
to get the volume in there. And according to this book, Amazon loses money on pretty much every e-commerce transaction today, which they make up on the AWS service.
Mm-hmm.
In this book, there's a number of companies that intentionally ignore screaming customers, understanding, what, there are going to be some skeletons and bodies on the side of the road. If we're going to get there, we need to get there quick. Have you ever worked with a company like this in this type of a scenario that also kind of wanted to manage the risk from a PR standpoint at the same time?
I can't think of a company that is interested in hyper growth that forgets their customers. Quite the opposite, actually. Between Amazon and Uber, if you've ever had an Uber Eats order where they forgot the sauce with their French fries, they will refund the entire order. Um, Amazon, if something arrives to you broken, they won't even ask for a picture of it. They won't ask for you to return it. They'll just say, throw it away and we'll send you another one. It's one of those things where, yeah, both of those businesses are losing a lot of money, but not just to move quickly. They're losing money because they're going above and beyond for customers. And one of the things that I worry about, candidly, for companies like Amazon and Uber is once they do get to wherever they want to go from a buying the marketplace perspective, what's going to happen to their customer service? Are they still going to be there with really great customer care 24/7 and be so willing to make good on issues with customers? Or is it going to be, hey, we bought the market, we're now in a place where we own this industry, we have a monopoly, there's no one else, you're stuck with us, so we're not going to help you anymore. I don't know what that future holds, but it's one of the kind of dangers of these companies that are growing so quickly.
Well, I mean, the example would be, utilities or,
Yep,
telcos or healthcare, healthcare
it's true.
providers. And that's obviously is the danger of a monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a competitive market, people provide service. If it's not, they cut costs.
It's very true.
You know.
Yep.
Well, we need a positive note to end this thing on. We can't end it on that. So what's next for you? What's on the horizon that's interesting or challenging or exciting besides your Thanksgiving dinner?
Very excited for my Thanksgiving dinner.
Do you have a favorite dish?
What's the turkey situation in Australia?
My wife was, because I was going to be here. She was like, "Oh man, you can't be without a turkey." So we had a Friendsgiving
Yeah.
where we smoked a turkey. My buddy has like a smoker.
Ooh.
It was delicious. So I did have a Thanksgiving before I left. These guys aren't. This thought leader group that I'm involved with is mostly Australian, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a few Americans. I'm one of the few, and they, Thanksgiving doesn't register on their calendar. So here I am.
So my favorite Thanksgiving dish is I'm originally from Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia, in Berks County, which is a very big Pennsylvania Dutch area. And the Pennsylvania Dutch side dish for Thanksgiving is called Cope's corn, and it's dried sweet corn that is rehydrated with butter and cream and sugar and everything that is fantastic about Thanksgiving. And it tastes like home. And you think about the long tail of internet commerce, there is actually a website called Pennsylvania General Store where you can buy these kinds of Pennsylvania-centric products and have them delivered to your door. So shout out to that company.
Beautiful. Just a shameless plug.
Yes.
You know, I was the guy who had the phone call with Chris Anderson, the former editor of Wired, who wrote the long tail story, and it was my pitch that led to the legend of the long tail.
I love it.
I was working with this company that had digital jukeboxes. So there were jukeboxes in bars, and they had every song ever played.
Mm-hmm.
And when they looked at, you know, what people played, they saw, you know, people don't play the top 40. You know, they play the bottom 3 million. And that was sort of the beginning of, I had that conversation with Chris, and actually the CEO I was working for did. And that's what sort of got his wheels turning around that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now that's a great story to end on.
Well, listen, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. And I appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving. And hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Thanks for the opportunity. Happy Thanksgiving to you and everyone in Australia.
Take care. Bye-bye.